Greetings and welcome to the second sign, where we're going to do our fourth section of a video we're watching about illegal deposition. If you were with us in the pre-show, you would have caught a 10-minute catch-up last week. Yeah, it's a very long video. There are periods of like protracted silences where they're waiting for emails to come through to each other, sending legal papers across so the counsellors can, definitely got it all. I will try and fill in those blanks and add my commentary on the way. So, and it's great to see Jeff Gashead and Nathan Oakley in the live chat this evening. Hope you're doing well. We're also over on Rumble. I will give you a quick catch-up of events from the last week. Right, let me just bring up the Rumble chat, so if anyone does happen to say hello in there, we'll see them. Part 1, 9 hours this video goes on with. As I say, there is a playlist, which I'll just take us to now. Where are we? That certainly isn't it. Here it is on my channel, on my YouTube channel. Unfortunately, you can't make playlists on Rumble yet. Hopefully they'll bring that in soon. But yeah, under my channel, if you go to Stanley Plotkins Watch Along, you will see all the first parts of the stream. Links in the description if you want to find that. Likewise, if you want to watch the entire video, the entire 9 hours in your own time, that is also possible. You just have to either click one of the links in the description of this evening's video. I'll just give you an example of that. Here we are. We've got our tonight's video. Hopefully it's lined up properly. Let me just check that. Not quite. Yep, hit the more button and you'll see links on YouTube to the full 9 hours, as which has been uploaded by another YouTuber actually. Might as well give them a shout out. Is it Jennifer Acomando? Thanks ever so much for putting this video up. It means that I've been able to put it on my own channel over on Rumble. Yeah, Jeff, disgusting human being. Well, obviously, I'll leave you guys to draw your own conclusions. I'm not gonna influence anyone's opinions on this. Of course, it's a medical subject. Giving medical information isn't what I do, so at no point tonight mistake anything I say as medical information. You can trust the words, though. However, of Stanley Plotkins, he is considered a big authority on the guy made vaccines. He runs classes where he teaches the making of vaccines, not just the gooey side of it, but the financial side of it as well. As we found out in the last part, we were just hearing that in the United States there is a system where children whose families can't afford to vaccinate them are given them free, and the CDC bring out a schedule. It's not the CDC, sorry, they did mention it. Check out either the catch-up to get the name. I'm sure we'll hear it again very soon. And they do a list of all the vaccines that children in the United States are allowed to have. Now,
have you ever used
hang on, where are we?
An experimental vaccine?
Yes.
It looks like the intro's playing again, my apologies. So part 1, we found out just how much money Stanley makes from his involvement. That was the main subject of part 1, I would say. Part 2, there was a couple of interesting points, but one that came up was yeah, just it turns out Stanley is on, despite considering himself a neutral, an expert witness in this case. If you're not familiar with it, it was two parents who I believe have divorced based on the information we're given, and from that they went to court over whether or not the child should receive this treatment plan. Stanley steps up to sway the judge in their favour, or in the defendant's favour, because it was the mother had to take the father to court in order to stop it happening. Otherwise it just would have happened anyway by the looks of it. And they go through, they list all the treatments that another, as far as he knows, a healthy child should take. And it's like they go through well into 20, and they talk about the adolescent years, they increase that again. They're using these kids as pincushions, literally. Crazy stuff. Although obviously it's not all injected. Some of it's put in sugar cubes. Some of it's probably sprayed up the nose. Ugh. Right, as I said, I wouldn't give medical advice to anyone, but the thought that hits my mind is stay TF away from it. But as I say, I'm not here to sway anyone's thoughts. Okay, we're going to get on. This is from where we left off. Actually, we're 5 seconds ahead. In the catch-up, we found out that one of the fellow patent holders with Stanley on a particular treatment that they wanted to vote on, one of the voting panels owned a patent on, he was the same patent owner as Stanley was. So it was a complete conflict of interest for this guy to be voting on whether or not they should add to the list of free vaccines for families that can't afford it. He should never have been voting, but he was for some reason. Okay, we're going to play it then, and I'll cut in temp here and there.
Second one approved then, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yes. Are you aware of the many other conflicts of interest regarding the vote to approve the rotavirus vaccine for universal use that we've just been discussing? That's been reported in a U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Government Reform report?
No.
Okay. Are you aware that this report found that, quote, the overwhelming majority of members, both voting members and consultants, have substantial ties to the pharmaceutical industry, end quote?
Well, I can't go back to 1998, but at the moment, my criticism of the ACIP committee is that many of the people on the committee do not have a very large knowledge about vaccines because they are eliminated from participating on the committee if they have any connections with industry.
Stanley's complaint with the committee that is now that's enforced to get vaccines voted into universal use in the United States. His complaint is that there's not enough people, industry people in there, business people, because he seems to think that the only way anyone would have knowledge on how effective the treatment plans are. Bear in mind, he did say that prior to this rotavirus, which, I'm going to look that up, I'm guessing it's something like measles. Let's see, it is, it's the most common cause of diarrheal disease among infants and young children. So when your kids get, get the craps, as it were, they've got an injection to cure that, apparently. They had to remove it from the market because the first one they were involved in voting on, it had to be removed because it was dangerous. So they bought a new one out. That is okay. Carry on. By the way, thanks Jeff for giving us some feedback on the audio. Hopefully I won't make any silly mistakes like leave the microphone on or leave myself on mute or leave the microphone off is probably more Common. Okay, we'll carry on.
And I understand why that is the case, but it does result in a group of people who aren't necessarily the best informed. That being said, I agree with the idea that that people who are on the ASIP should have no conflict of interest.
But as has been established, we already had that. That was the case by the sounds of it. We have had a conflict of interest. Not that Stanley's come out and acknowledged that. It looked like Aaron Siri, who is co-counsel for the plaintiff, the guy questioning Stanley, almost got him to admit that there's a conflict of interest, but let him off the hook, I would say.
Pardon?
This is one of those long
Oh,
silences.
the videographer was kindly advising me not to keep smacking my mic. That's pinned to my tie.
Gotcha.
Don't worry, Aaron, it's the sort of thing I do all the time. I've got headphones in my hands and I can only manage one. Constantly doing that.
Last question on this. Are you aware that this report by the U.S. House of Representative Committee on Government Reform concluded that ASIP, quote, reflects, quote, a system where the government officials make crucial decisions affecting American children without the advice and consent of the governed?
I'm not aware of that report, and
I'll give you a copy.
I do not agree with it.
I'm gonna.
Interesting. How can you not agree with a report that you're not aware of? Have a look at it, Stanley. Read the report before you say that you're not actually in agreement with it.
There are 9. I'm going to hand you what's being marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 9. Happy to provide you a copy as well after the deposition that you can take home with you.
Stanley won't want to take that copy home with him.
No, I will be interested in reading this, but I would say two things. One is that CDC certainly recently has lent over backwards to try to avoid people with conflicts of interest being on ACIP. And second, that ACIP meets under public conditions. That is to say, the meeting is open to the public, the meeting is on the web, so that thousands of people literally can observe what goes on at the meeting and decide for themselves whether or not there is any hanky-panky. So although, as I said before, I might wish that people with more knowledge about vaccines be on the ACIP, by and large, I think that they do a hell of a good job under public scrutiny.
The working group.
I will just point out, he had his mouth covered from the camera throughout everything he just said. Just a little body language. If I was watching this on YouTube, I would skip back so you could just see how he covered his mouth throughout saying all of that. Yeah, he does not like that the CDC is going to great efforts to stop people with conflicts of interest being able to vote on whether their own product gets put into universal use, as we found out was the case with the first rotavirus vaccine. it was voted in by people who own patents and stand to make an awful lot of money on it. Unfortunately, Stanley's very disappointed to find that they now bend over backwards to stop that from happening.
Are those also public?
They are not public in the sense that the public does not attend the working group. The working group does report back to the full ACIP, and the working group's presentations are presented publicly.
But the discussions that the working groups have and conference calls leading up to ACIP meetings, those are not transcribed, are they?
Bear in mind, what Stanley referred to as hanky-panky, he didn't want to use a term so damaging as, I guess, I don't know what you'd call it. How deep would that be? Yeah, despite saying literally thousands of people can see what goes on at these meetings, he's had to say they're not open to the public and the minutes of these meetings are not made available for anyone. Other than that, they're completely open for thousands of people to see what goes on, apparently. Yeah, Jeff mentions he isn't even reading that report. No, he's using it to cover his mouth as he... whatever that says about a person when they cover their mouth when they're talking. I'll let you look that one up for yourself.
They are not, no.
Right. And the members and individuals who participate in those working groups, right, which often lead to what the ACIP then rubber stamps, are permitted to have all forms and do have all forms of conflicts with industry, don't they?
They may, but I would contest the word rubber stamp. I've never seen the ACIP rubber stamp a working group recommendation. Often it's just the opposite.
You've also said that that the meetings are available to the public.
Yes, indeed, he said they're available to the public. He literally said it about 1 minute ago. Also, if you haven't seen the second and third parts of this, well, the first three parts heavily covered the financial, the numbers that Stanley got. At one point, he received a single payment of $6 million when a certain company sold their interest in the product that he put together. And he also said about how much money is generated in the United States by the sale of vaccines, and I think they came up to 50 billion, and he predicted 30 billion of that was done by what they called in this video the four main manufacturers, the big four. They received about, I think he said about 40% of it.
You've attended, you said, almost every ACIP meeting, correct?
Correct.
Since, what was it, the 60s?
Yeah, roughly, yes.
And you attended the most recent one as well?
The most recent one being, let's see, that would have been last October. Yes, I did.
Did. Mm-hmm. Were you presented anything at that meeting?
I presented the fact that I will no longer attend the meetings.
Were you presented anything by the ACIP committee?
Yes.
What were you presented?
I was told that there is a gavel with my name on it, that it will be used henceforth at the meetings.
And they gave, so going forward, from this point forward, the gavel that's used at ACIP will have your name on it?
Correct.
Okay.
That would suggest this guy has been, just how instrumental he is. Of course, a gavel, if you're not aware, is what, judges use when they, say, order, or I guess in these meetings when they pass something, or as he said, rubber stamps, they hit the gavel, I'm guessing. And that now has his name on it. Right. Madness.
You gave a speech at that meeting, correct?
Yes.
When they posted the video of that meeting on the internet, did they include your speech, Dr. Plotkin?
I don't know, but I suppose they did.
You can check after this deposition on the website and see if your speech is there. We have not been able to find it.
Really?
Now,
Wow.
regularly
Too
at
bad.
ASIP meetings, you get up and speak, correct?
I often do, yes.
Yeah, so you're able to get up pretty much at any time and speak, aren't you?
Yes,
And you don't have to wait for the public comment period, correct?
correct.
And that's also true of vaccine manufacturers. They also are permitted to get up and come to the mic and speak, even not when there isn't public.
Yes, they are often asked to answer questions that are being discussed.
Isn't it true that they also get up and come to the front to speak even when not asked a question?
They may do so if they have, if it's a discussion about one of their products.
He didn't actually ask if they may do so. He asked they do come up and speak.
But if members of the public want to speak, they have to wait till the public speaking period, correct?
Normally, yes.
Okay. And when the videos are released, a lot of the conversations that occur between the pharmaceutical representatives and ASIP, do those also make it to the video that's released publicly?
As far as I know, the video contains all of the public hearings. In other words, if somebody comes to the mic, they are photographed, and as far as I know, they appear on the web. I must say that since I've been attending the meetings, I haven't really watched them, but I will in February when they meet again.
Why watch it on YouTube when you can actually attend the event itself and have free reign to speak anytime you want?
So apart from the working groups that occur out of public sight,
Hang on. Yeah, I would say Aaron made a interesting comparison there. He pointed out that vaccine manufacturers have a right to speak anytime they want, as does Stanley, meaning he is, despite claiming to be an expert witness in a legal case, he is a vaccine manufacturer. He's considered, on par with them at these meetings. So hardly an unbiased expert witness, I guess you could say. He's just here arguing the case for his company. That's pretty much how it looks.
what other meetings or goings about does ASIP engage in that's outside of the scrutiny of the public?
Aside from working groups, I'm not aware that they do have anything that's not public. I suppose they meet at lunchtime, and I don't attend those discussions, but that's all I know.
Billions of dollars worth of rotavirus vaccine have been sold to date, correct?
I believe so. I'm not acquainted with the sales figures.
Interesting. Apologies, by the way, I had my mic on. You could hear me sucking my lolly, which keeps my knife lubricated. Earlier on, he claimed not to know the sales figures, but when pushed, was able to say, he was asked earlier on how much in a year the manufacturers made, and he claimed he was unable to, he didn't know. And then later on, he was able to tell him that 20 billion of the 50 billion that is spent on vaccines was made by the Big Four. So he knew a very specific detail about it, despite claiming, as he is now, not to know sales figures. I get the impression Stanley's probably well up on sales figures.
Does vaccination create a systemic change in the body?
Vaccination creates a change in the immune system of the body.
Okay. is that supposed to be system-wide? Meaning, if I get vaccinated in my arm, but I'm infected in my toe, am I supposed to still be immune?
Yes.
Okay. So would you?
Okay, by the way, yeah, this is something I notice Aaron Siri does a lot. He goes from talking about in detail to finances to just very suddenly changing the tempo and talking about, say, earlier on he went on to DNA, and now he's suddenly gone on to ask about the effectiveness of, he clarified the name used, if you get, do they protect your whole body even if like you're only locally being treated? So if something's stuck in your arm, yeah, I'm sure you get the point. We'll carry on.
Is it correct to say that vaccination is intended to create a systemic change in the body, throughout the body?
It's intended to create a systemic change in the immune system of the body.
Okay. In the immune system everywhere in the body?
The immune system is expressed everywhere in the body, yes. The immune system consists of antibody-producing cells and cells that are able to influence other cells.
So can you read back the last answer?
Question. The immune system is expressed everywhere in the body. Yes, the immune system consists of antibody-producing cells and cells that are able to influence other cells.
By the way, he's just having it read back to him now.
Okay. Does the immune system comprised of more than antibody-producing cells?
It also also includes what are called T cells that are able to kill infected cells, for example, and to secrete substances that also have an effect on immunity.
Okay. And is that referred to typically as cellular immunity?
Yes.
And the immunity conferred by vaccines that you were talking about earlier is called
humoral immunity, yes.
Thank you, appreciate that. Humoral immunity.
Yes.
Okay. So humoral immunity creates antibodies, and it's called humoral because it originates from the bones. Is that kind of where the name derives from?
Well, the name
I don't know.
derives from the ancient term humors, but in effect it means antibodies that circulate throughout the body and can impact against infecting organisms.
Okay. And the systemic change that you've described is supposed to last years, if not a lifetime, correct?
Yes.
From vaccination?
Yes.
Okay, so Stanley said that the treatment they give him causes a systemic change in the body that lasts a lifetime. Bear in mind, at the very beginning, Stanley was asked if he knows the medical background of the child that this case is in referring to, and he didn't. So pretty much saying that, yeah, he was asked if this is an otherwise healthy child or healthy person, this is what he needs. So an otherwise healthy person, for some, why would they need a systemic change that lasts a lifetime? Crazy.
When you say interact with other cells,
Mm-hmm.
when you say that the immunity created by vaccines creates antibodies which then interact with other cells, can you describe that a bit more? What do you mean by interact with other cells?
Well, the T cells, as I said, are able to attack infected cells in the body by a variety of mechanisms. They may actually directly kill those infected cells by direct action, as it were, or by secreting substances that can kill the cells. And they also influence cells to respond to the infection so that the infection doesn't continue to spread and impact on the individual's health.
And how do the cells respond to the infection? Can you describe that?
You mean the patient's own cells?
I mean, I thought that's what you were referring to in your explanation.
Yeah, the T. Do you mean the infected cells or the T cells that are acting on the infected cells?
By the way, just for clarity, T cells are what are injected into you. That's the transformative. I don't know what T stands for, but I'm guessing, yeah, they do go into how these T cells are made later on.
We'll start with the T cells.
Well, the T cells, as I've said, have a variety of functions. They can secrete substances that...
They can secrete, what a lovely word, and they can also take direct action, as in hand-to-hand combat. These T cells are tough nuts by all accounts.
That will kill an infected cell, or they can influence actually the antibody producing system. They have impacts on a variety of ways in which the body protects itself.
What an interesting statement to make. These T cells change the way the body protects itself. Why? Is that, I mean, unless you consider as a kid getting mumps, for example, as a terrible, life-threatening thing, they do, of course, argue they do bring up things like pregnant women, which is people they say are particularly prone to it, and that is why they stick pregnant women with as many pins as they can, by the sound of it.
Against infection. There are cells called natural killer cells, for example, that can help protect an individual.
To be honest with you, Stanley, if I was going to make something that would protect an individual, I wouldn't call it a kill cell. That's like the most aggressive name you could give something. Killing what? Oh, the infected cells. Killing cells, full stop.
Against an infection, and the T cells can influence the natural killer cells. So it's a complicated system by which the body responds to an infection.
Can you show us any proof of this happening, Stanley?
Or to a vaccine, which allows the individual cells to be ready for an infection if it occurs.
Modern immunology, though, doesn't fully understand that full cascade, correct?
I'm sorry?
I said modern medicine, modern immunology does not fully understand the complete sequence of events in terms of going from vaccination to immunity, correct?
Well, science never completely understands anything, but we know a great deal about how the body responds to vaccines.
Of course, his science never fully understands anything, because I don't think it is science, actually. All these people are there to discuss are the people he says that knows best about them are those that have a vested interest. They know about the business side of flogging off vials of goodness knows what. But he says his science doesn't fully understand anything.
Or to infection, and that knowledge is growing every day.
No, Stanley, your bank balance is growing every day. The understanding the sequence of treatment is probably where it was when he first started making them, as they say, back in the 60s.
Of course, we don't completely understand anything, including how the sun works, but that doesn't prevent us from using knowledge.
What about...
Interesting there, he said, look, my treatment's not the only nonsense thing that we tell you we know all about. Look at the sun. There's a lot of nonsense about the sun as well, because I think they do tell us we know how the sun works.
About its effects on other body systems, can creating this immune response also have effects not only on creating antibodies to target cells that have been infected, but can it also have other bodily changes, other effects that are either known or unknown?
Well, that's such a hypothetical question. I'm not sure how to answer it.
He's not sure how to say, yeah, absolutely. We have no idea how our treatments may affect the human body, because, as we've said ourselves, we don't fully understand it.
Is an immunized individual any different than an unimmunized individual? Yes. Does the fact that the individual is immune have an effect on his or her general health? I'm not aware that that's the case. Remember that vaccines are in effect mimicking what happens after natural infections in many cases.
Interesting. He's just said vaccines are there to mimic what happens after someone gets ill. He also said a person who's been vaccinated isn't necessarily going to be more healthy than someone that hasn't. Yeah, Jeff says he knows they lie about almost everything. I imagine that to be the case. You're absolutely right.
But without causing the complete range of disease that the organism causes.
So vaccines are just nothing more than a piece of the virus or bacteria? Is that it? Is that all they contain?
Depends on the vaccine. That is to say, whether it's a live vaccine or a killed vaccine. The killed vaccines may only have small parts of the organism that they're protecting against. The live vaccines contain the whole organisms, but...
Okay, he was asked if vaccines are no more than part of the, let's say, flu virus or rotavirus, any of the other numerous things they discuss. Is a vaccine just a very small, is it a piece of the bug? And he said, oh, there's two different kinds, live and kill. Live vaccines are ones where they put the entire illness into you, he said, complete organisms. Kill vaccines, although he made it sound like they aren't just little more than the entire organism. He said, oh, just fragments in those ones.
Altered so that they don't cause disease.
Before vaccines are licensed, they go through clinical trials to confirm their safety, right?
Correct.
Okay. These clinical trials assess if there are any harms These clinical trials assess if there are any harms caused by the vaccine, correct?
Yes.
Was the DTP vaccine withdrawn from the U.S. market?
The wholesale
The DTP
pertussis
wholesale.
vaccines have been withdrawn, yes.
Right. Because of safety concerns, right?
Because they cause significant fever and convulsions, febrile seizures, and it was decided that it would be better to have a pertussis vaccine that didn't cause that type of reaction. So they were taken off the market, not because they were not working, quite the opposite, but because of safety concerns. Now, I do have to point out that aside from the US and Europe, whole cell pertussis vaccines are still used in the vast majority of countries in the world, and they are getting along just fine with those vaccines.
Despite telling us that they cause convulsions, this is for cure of whooping cough, they produce convulsions and have been taken off the plan because of safety concerns. They're still using them in other countries and they're getting on fine with their convulsions and high fevers.
Are you familiar with Peter Abe, Dr. Peter Abe?
Yes, of course.
Didn't he recently publish a paper in which he looked at children who received DTP vaccine in the first 6 months of life versus children who received no vaccines in the first 6 months of life, and found that those that received DTP died at a rate of 10 times that of the unvaccinated?
I don't remember the exact figures, but you have to take into account that Peter Abe, I have had many discussions with Peter Abe.
Bear in mind, he was just asked about a report that concluded children that were receiving it were dying at a rate of 10 times the amount of children that didn't. And all he's gone on is to tell us about Peter Ovray, the person that published the report. Okay.
Peter Abe's work is done in a non-placebo controlled ways. That is, his studies are observational.
He is now, is it character assassinating the person by saying his trials don't, so he's not saying he doesn't do trials, he's saying that they don't use a placebo group, which...
Second point is that those studies have been examined more than once by World Health Organization committees, and their judgment has been that the effects of the pertussis vaccine in particular are not sufficiently documented to be acceptable or to change vaccination practice. So WHO does not recommend against the use of whole cell pertussis vaccines. Quite the opposite. They do recommend them.
You said non-placebo controlled. What do you mean?
I mean that essentially what Peter does, and I'm not criticizing.
What Peter does is studies the effects of children that have had the treatment and children that haven't had it. And Stanley's complaint is that they didn't give the people that didn't have it a placebo, maybe trying to suggest that this somehow invalidates any findings that he might have come up with because they didn't give him a placebo.
Him because obviously it's very difficult.
Of course, placebo, if you're not aware, is just a artificial treatment, like a water tablet, just so you know, and they might tell these groups so they don't know who's having it and who isn't, because they're all given treatment, but the placebo would be like giving you a Tic Tac, which by the sounds of it would probably be a lot better for you than some of the other treatments. Anyway.
To do, but he doesn't have randomly vaccinated or children who randomly receive pertussis vaccine or don't receive pertussis vaccine. What he has is he follows children who have received this or that or the other vaccine and tries to draw conclusions from what he sees. But in the absence of random administration, you don't know for sure whether it's the vaccine or other factors that are operating.
So in the study that I mentioned to you, if the children were either that were exposed to DTP.
Brilliant use of the word, by the way, exposed. That's I'm sure not the word Stanley would have used. He probably would have said children that were treated with the I don't know the initials, but it's a whooping coughs vaccine.
And unexposed were randomized, that would make the study valid.
Yes.
So having absolutely no controls, they just totally randomize it.
And again, the WHO has at least twice gone over Peter's studies and has decided that they are not of sufficient proof to change their recommendations.
Do you have a copy of those reports from the WHO?
Oh, gosh.
Because I'm going to make a demand for those WHO reports.
Yeah, you hold him to task, Aaron. Nice one. Make him prove what he's saying.
Do you remember when those reports came out?
Oh, within recent years. I don't remember the year.
More than a year ago?
Probably, yes.
Okay. Peter Abe's study just came out last year.
Well, I imagine WHO will reconsider them, but his studies suggesting that pertussis vaccine may increase mortality have been around for a while.
Yeah, this certainly isn't the first time someone suggested that your treatments may be causing mortality, which is death.
Not the first study that he's done. Also, one has to appreciate the context. By that I mean that he's also shown or attempted to show that live vaccines like measles vaccine has a very positive effect on mortality. In other words, that in his observations, those who receive measles vaccine suffer from fewer diseases in general and have a lower mortality. And that effect has actually been confirmed immunologically. So one has to look at the whole context of things. That is to say, his data are not anti-vaccine data. His data relate to the possibility that vaccines have effects beyond the specific disease that they're designed for.
By the way, body language. Look at Stanley covering his face as he admits that the guy who did the study that claimed that this whooping cough vaccine that Stanley was probably involved in caused mortality. He's not anti-vaccine. He even brings out reports that suggest some have positive effects on people. So in a way he's saying, no, this isn't some crackpot anti-vaxxer doing this study. This is someone who seems to want to offer genuine statistics, if nothing else. But yeah, body language. Look at Stanley hiding his face.
So you agree with his findings regarding live vaccines?
I agree because, as I've said, and as I advised him years ago, that he has to find some immunological correlate to his findings, or otherwise they're not believable. Mm-hmm. And what's happened is that scientists not working with Peter have looked at measles vaccination and have shown that the vaccine has effects on what I referred to as natural killer cells before, and that they do seem to reduce mortality against other diseases. So, science works that way.
Covering his mouth while he says all this, by the way.
Scientist does not gain acceptance for his findings unless they're repeated elsewhere and unless they're consistent with the entire range of facts, not just single ones.
Peter Abe is a respected researcher, correct?
I'm sorry?
Is a respected researcher.
He's a respected researcher. I respect him, just as I respect many other scientists who are attempting to find out things that we don't know yet.
So he respects the guy who claimed that the vaccine caused death, basically, despite criticizing his method for getting the results. Although it would seem when he has something positive to say about a treatment, Stanley and the World Health Organization allegedly accept these studies, but the other way around, nah, unlikely.
In conducting pre-licensure clinical trials for vaccines, what is the difference between solicited and unsolicited reactions?
Well, solicited reactions means that you ask the vaccinee whether he's had X, Y, or Z. Unsolicited are reactions that the patient reports to the investigator without being specifically questioned about them.
So, just to clarify, an unsolicited report would be, it's not someone directly putting even the idea into your head. This is someone coming out of the blue and reporting an adverse effect.
And who decides what gets put on the solicited list and who decides what symptoms get put on the solicited list of reactions?
Well, generally the investigator. However, one has to take into account that the companies meet with FDA during the development of vaccines, and that FDA basically has to approve the protocols. And so if FDA thinks that a particular reaction should be measured, they will tell the investigators to include them.
But the list is created by the pharmaceutical company developing the vaccine.
In the first instance, yes, and then approved by the FDA.
Okay. Let's take a 2-minute break. Does that sound good?
Yes, Aaron, that sounds great, because I think I'm actually going to take an intermission myself. I'm going to leave you with a video from, I don't know, it's a 4-video compilation. It goes on for about 8 minutes. That means if anyone wants to grab themselves, use the facilities, refill your drink, which is what I'm going to do. And then when we come back, we will be going on. You see the clock on the screen at the minute? Once that gets to 30 minutes. Once they have 30 minutes, then we will bring the 4th part of this stream to a halt. Yeah, Jeff, thanks for sharing some thoughts in the live chat. Hadn't noticed that about Stanley's cheeks. All I notice is that he does seem to cover his mouth quite a lot. Yes. Right, so yeah, I would like to take the time to thank anyone who's tuned in so far. Where are we? Thanks for being with us. I'm actually just going to, as I say, refill my drink before we carry on. I'm going to leave you with... What am I doing? I can't get in the shot. There we go. I'm there just about. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, carry on. Right, give us a sec then. Right, yeah, I hope you're enjoying the stream. Oh yeah, something I'll suggest, by the way, in the live chat, Nathan and I were talking, in the pre-show, I mentioned how the thumbs up numbers weren't that good. So if anyone does want to hit the thumbs up button on this video before we finish up, that would be much appreciated. Alright, where are we? Alright, these videos range from August 2019 to August 2020. 4 videos about a few subjects. And I'll be back very soon. Have we got a note where I can say be back in a minute? Intermission. Back soon. I have actually noticed you can crop out on live streams. I might crop out these intermissions maybe from the final stream. Something you can do on YouTube but not on Rumble. Yeah, if anyone is watching on Rumble or even YouTube and you want to say hello, yeah, I hope you take the time to do that. As I said, if you want to be so good as to hit the thumbs up button if you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, as well as subscribing and sharing, that is always appreciated. Okay, enjoy our intermission. See you in about 7 or 8 minutes.
To the top of the mountain, Chris joked he wasn't ready for.
Oh, don't know what happened there. Let me just line up this video so it's a bit more viewable. Okay, back in a sec. Hi everyone. Now I've made a few videos on Katy Perry and her pregnancy, and this I'm hoping is going to be the last one, unless I see any other like extraordinary things which I think I've got to question it. The latest one is Entertainment Tonight's channel. A couple of pictures which are worth looking at. It was actually the story that follows which I want to bring to your attention. As you see, she's always got to hold the bump up. Every time you see these sorts of pictures of her showing the baby, she's always supporting it. And of course we do see one picture. Let's take a look at that belly button. Some looks a bit off to me, a bit plasticky and fake, but you can make your own judgments on that one. It's this next story. This couple, listen to what they say.
That's how the dad-to-be captioned this pic. He and his very active 9 months pregnant wife, Catherine, took a hike on Saturday to the top of the mountain. Chris joked he wasn't ready for the birth just yet. Quote, kind of great.
Hiking to the top of the mountain when you're literally ready to drop. And it goes from the ridiculous to the unlikely with this.
Her and I both go in labor on the same day. I know, I admit, me too.
Well, close. The sisters just gave birth just 1 day apart. Nikki's little boy came first, both moms posting nearly identical shots of their infant son's hands. No names have been announced yet, but back in June, they told us this.
We really want to name him after Brian's dad who passed.
1,000,000 to 1 chance that they happen to both get pregnant at the same time, and there's got to be 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance that they would ever give birth 1 day after the other. I'm actually pleased to see, based on the comments I get on some of the videos I've already put out, that a lot of other people are questioning this. Well, I've left a link in the description to that video. If you want to see it for yourself, leave a comment on there. Thanks for all the feedback on the comment section. I always appreciate them and enjoy reading your views. If you want to leave a comment on this one, that'd be great. This has been Bobby Zones, and as always, thank you for watching.
This is not a mask. This is confidence.
It's for getting out and working anywhere other than home.
This is not a mask. This is solidarity. It's for opening the door to a friend and keeping the doors open to your favorite places.
This is not a mask. This is a sign of love.
Hi everyone. Now in a recent video I said that I was done with making videos on Katy Perry and her fake pregnancy, but just yesterday they announced the birth of the child, and of course on Instagram they've put the very predictable picture of the baby's hand. It seems to be a very common theme in these fake pregnancies. Video I made earlier, we showed a couple of stories that Chris Pratt and Schwarzenegger woman, in inverted commas, and their baby, and these twins from professional wrestling that both gave birth a day after each other. And the one thing you notice is that the same pictures are always showing up. A common part of a fake pregnancy that they have to present a picture of the baby's hands. We can go right back to Meghan and Harry. It was one of the first pregnancies I realised was being faked. Of course they've been going on a lot longer than since I noticed, but that was the first one I covered, and of course they had a picture out like this. It just seems like a very common part of the script. First of all you show the mums with the fake pregnancy tummies, then they give birth without a hitch, never a problem, and then immediately up on Instagram a picture of the baby's hand clutching fingers. It's just common, it's predictable. There is one picture that I think looks a bit odd in this, and it's this one. As we look, I think you've got to ask, where is the baby's head? How are those hands just floating out of her torso? It's weird. That's just a quick video I wanted to make to cover the fact that the baby that I've been saying is fake has now been born. Doesn't make it any more real, just means they're continuing to fake it. Any comments or questions you have are always welcome. As always, thank you for watching. Hi everyone, now in this video I'm going to ask the question whether NASA, which stands for National Aeronautics and Space Agency, about how deceptive they are with some of the images they show us. Now if you actually look into the credits for some of the pictures, like images taken by the Hubble telescope, they are quite open about the fact that they are artist renditions. The artists are receiving like data in the form of numbers, and from that making pictures. If you search deep enough into the images and the credits, you will see that. But I'm going to look at the pictures that they post on social media. Here we have one from NASA's social account. It shows the Earth with a picture of the moon. There's the astronaut Nick Hague, who is currently up on the International Space Station, supposedly, and is sharing what would appear to be pictures. Now what I think is always interesting is taking one of these photos. I mean, here you can see they've got the moon in the background. Taking these photos and dropping them into a program. I use GIMP, but there's also Photoshop. Here we see the moon. Now bear in mind, if these astronauts are really where they say they are, they shouldn't have a huge amount of problems taking pictures, legitimate pictures of the moon and so on, and the curve of the Earth. So why would they need to fake it? Now if we go to colours, take the saturation and increase the lightness a bit, and what you notice is that around the moon is this funny kind of box, which would suggest that, well, I'll show you what a regular picture of the moon looks like. This is one I took from Bournemouth Beach. Not the best picture, it was taken on my phone, but you can still see the moon. Now this is how it looks when we put a regular picture of the moon into programs and do the same sort of thing. We'll up the lightness. The picture gets lighter, but at no time do you see boxes appear around the moon. In fact, we'll even mess with the hue, the saturation, nothing. That moon stays exactly the same as you would expect it to. Now we have another picture from NASA. This one is shared from NASA's social website. Again, a picture of the Earth with the moon above it. Let's do the same process. Go to colours, hue and saturation, up the lightness, and what do you see? Yep, another box around the moon. Why? I don't get that. As I said, if these people are really where they claim they are in the International Space Station, surely they can take legitimate pictures without the need to add in images like this. I don't understand it. Well, any comments or questions you may have on this are always welcome, always appreciated. Please share them, and I'll catch you again soon. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for your patience. I hope you're still with us, if you were even with us before this stream. If you've got any thoughts or comments, I always do suggest leaving a comment if you're watching this after the actual stream. We will get back on with the video. Right. Yeah, they were literally just taking a 2-minute break on here. We'll see what time they come back, and from there we'll go on till about 12:30 on their clock. We'll see how it goes. Okay.
We are going off the record. The time is 11:50.
I just have to use the restroom.
Deposition of Stanley Plotkins. We are on the record. The time is 12:37.
Okay. Dr. Plotkin, earlier you testified that there are 2 Hep B vaccines in the market, one by Glaxo, GSK, that's Engerix B, and the other one is by Merck, Recombavax HB, right?
Yes.
Okay. For Recombavax HB, how long was the safety review period in the pre-licensure clinical trial for this vaccine?
I don't know.
That probably means we didn't do any. Bear in mind, Stanley is one of the people that was involved in creating these treatments. He has no idea how long any study went on for. Hopefully Aaron knows and can enlighten us.
17.
I imagine it's going to be probably a bit of a surprise. The look on Stanley's face isn't exactly one of a cheerful man right now.
Dr. Plotkin, I'm going to hand you what's been labeled Plaintiff's Exhibit 10.
I'm going to make a prediction. Stanley's going to use this sheet to cover his mouth when he talks. At least cover it from the camera.
This is the product, the manufacturer insert for Recombavax HB, correct?
Yes.
And the clinical trial experience would be found in section 6.1, correct? Correct? Dr. Plotkin?
Yes.
Okay. In section 6.1, when you look at the clinical trials that were done pre-licensure for Recombavax HB, how long does it say that safety was monitored after each dose?
Let's see. Uh, 5 days.
Okay. Is 5 days long enough to detect adverse reactions that occur?
By the way, he's covering his whole face with the sheet now. Having said that these studies went on for 5 days. Stick a pin in a kid, wait 5 days, and that's all we need.
After 5 days?
No, they would be reported separately as observed in the clinic.
In section 6.1 of the manufacturer insert, which
Yeah, by the way, it's pretty much said, no, we haven't included any adverse effects that happen after 5 days in the insert, which the patient probably never even sees anyway. Sorry, the victim, I should say, who's being exposed to this stuff. Yeah, there's a separate place they can go and read about those adverse effects. We're not going to advertise that in our marketing material.
Under the Code of Federal Regulations, they're supposed to describe the clinical trial. Does it provide for anything other than 5 days of monitoring after each dose for adverse events?
It does not specifically say that, no.
Okay. Is 5 days long enough to detect an autoimmune issue that arises after 5 days?
No.
Is 5 days long enough to detect a seizure that arises after 5 days? Okay.
It would be unlikely to have a seizure occur after 5 days.
Is 5 days long enough to detect any neurological disorder that arose from the vaccine after 5 days?
No.
Okay. Was there any control group in this trial? Let me rephrase that. There is no control group, correct?
Not, let's see. Well, they mention 3,258 doses were administered to 1,252 healthy adults.
And we're only monitored for 5 days, Stanley.
That's right. But does it mention any control group, Dr. Plotkin?
It does not mention any control group, no.
No. If you turn to section 6.2,
by the way, control group, that would be the placebo group. Wasn't that the complaint that Stanley had about the the tests that were done earlier on, and he said that he had a problem with the way the what's the word they use, studies, the trials are done, because they didn't use control group. And now, yeah, this very same study that was used to determine whether or not this treatment plan was safe also didn't happen to use a control group.
what is the list of adverse reactions listed in this section?
These are reports of adverse reactions that likely were reported to the VAERS system.
Under immune system disorders, does it say that there were reports of hypersensitive reactions, including anaphylactoid reactions, bronchospasms, and urticaria having been reported within the first few hours after vaccination?
Yes.
Have there been reports of hypersensitivity syndrome?
Yes, that's what it states.
Reports of arthritis?
It is mentioned.
Okay. It also reports autoimmune diseases, including systemic lupus, erythematosus, lupus-like syndrome, vasculitis, and polyarteritis nodosa as well, correct?
Yes, that's what it states.
And also it states that under the nervous system disorders, it states that after there have been reports of Guillain-Barré syndrome, correct?
Yes.
As well as multiple sclerosis, exacerbation of multiple sclerosis, myelitis, including transverse myelitis, seizure, febrile seizure, peripheral neuropathy, including Bell's palsy, radiculopathy. Thank you very much. Muscle weakness, hypothesia, and encephalitis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now,
before you go on, these reports are required to be included because they have been reported to the authorities as happening after vaccination. That is not proof that the vaccine caused those reactions, because things happen to people all the time, whether or not they've been vaccinated. And as I said, the company is required to report these. Now, I mention that specifically because multiple sclerosis, for example, is mentioned here. Multiple sclerosis has been studied in relation to hepatitis B vaccine, and there's no relationship, no causal relationship. So the fact that these things are in the package circular does not mean that the vaccine necessarily caused the stated phenomenon.
At least they didn't cause them in the 5-day study that they did.
When you say that multiple sclerosis has been studied and is determined to not have been caused, you're talking about the 2011 IOM report, I assume?
I'm talking about studies mostly done in France, where the situation arose where there was a concern about that.
You're aware of the 2011 IOM report that looked at certain vaccines in relation to whether they can cause certain adverse reactions?
Yes.
Okay, are you aware that one of the conditions they looked at was multiple sclerosis?
Among others, yes.
Among others, and that they specifically looked at it with regards to hepatitis B?
Yes.
And do you know what their finding was?
I don't remember the exact wording, no.
Yeah, maybe this will remind you. Inadequate to accept or reject a causal relationship. They didn't know, correct?
Yes, but you have to understand, first of all, that science continues, and so studies continue. And secondly, that the IOM specifically decided that they would not draw a conclusion if they weren't sure of the conclusion. So what that statement means is that they don't have data that confirm that multiple sclerosis is caused by the hepatitis B vaccine, but that they don't regard that they have enough data to positively exclude it. So you cannot read that as saying that multiple sclerosis is caused by hepatitis B vaccine.
Just that despite their studies, you can't say it. You also cannot say that it will not. You know, that it doesn't cause it. They just haven't done enough studies.
I never said that. The IOM did, for some of the vaccines and adverse reactions, did conclude that it favors rejection of a causal relationship, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It didn't reach that conclusion for hepatitis B and multiple sclerosis, correct?
It did not reach that conclusion, but other data suggests that conclusion is warranted, that there is no relationship.
Okay. Well, I'll make a demand for that. You can produce that after.
I thought Aaron would demand that. Good on him.
Just keep notes of all the so, what would need to be done in order to know whether or not any of these reported conditions are caused by the vaccine? What you would need is a properly randomized, as you said earlier, placebo-controlled study, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And also, I would point out that multiple sclerosis is a disorder of adults, and the issue that arose in France was related to vaccination of adults.
Okay.
That does not mean that it would be an issue, even if it were an issue, for children.
Dr. Plotkin, I was just asking you what it says on there. There's lots of conditions listed. I'm not saying that multiple sclerosis is caused by this. I'm just asking you if it's listed on section 6.2. In fact, we can even read the top of section 6.2, which says the following additional adverse reactions have been reported with the use of the marketed vaccine. Because these reactions are reported voluntarily from a population of uncertain size, it is not possible to reliably estimate their frequency or establish a causal relationship to a vaccine exposure, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that's what it's...
So, Stanley, you cannot say that this treatment will not cause multiple sclerosis. As he says, only in adults, so kids don't have to worry.
It says right at the top of 6.2. Okay, but these are events that are reported after vaccination, and as we've just discussed, in order to establish whether it's causal between the vaccine and the condition, you need a randomized, placebo-controlled study. But
Yes.
that was not done for this hepatitis B vaccine before licensure, was it?
No.
Okay. And given that the vaccine now appears on the CDC's recommended list, isn't it true that it would now be considered unethical to conduct such a study today?
It would be, yes, it would be ethically difficult.
Okay. So let's take a look at Engerex B.
So once something makes it onto the list, it becomes unethical to do any testing on it again. Why exactly? Are the tests that they do so terrible that they consider it unethical? Does it perhaps involve the use of, as we will certainly come to find out, aborted fetuses? That does actually come up. And that's why he, shifted a bit and said, yeah, it would be unethical to test again.
That's the other hepatitis B vaccine that you're testified you recommend Faith received. Do you know how long adverse reactions were reviewed after each dose of that vaccine in the pre-licensure clinical trial?
Not offhand, no.
Less or more than 5 days, what do you think? I imagine we'll find out in just a second. As papers are shuffled.
I'm going to hand you what has been marked Plaintiff's Exhibit 11. This is the manufacturer insert for the Engerex B, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you turn to section 6.1, which is clinical trials experience, can you please tell me how long the safety review period was in the pre-licensure clinical trials after each dose?
All subjects were monitored for 4 days post-administration.
Less, 4 days. Wow.
That does not necessarily mean that they didn't collect reactions after 4 days.
Are you?
No, it probably means we're only taking into account reactions found within the first 4 days. If you want to find out after 4 days, there's another report that, if you're lucky, you might get to read.
Are you claiming they collected reactions after 4 days, but didn't disclose it here in violation of the Code of Federal Regulations?
That's pretty much what he's saying. I wonder why they didn't disclose it.
I dare say that they collected putative reactions for a longer period. I feel quite positive about that. When they say they were monitored for 4 days, that means active monitoring as opposed to collecting reports later on.
Uh-huh.
That is not uncommon in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm. Is 4 days long enough to detect an autoimmune issue that arises after 4 days?
No.
Or a neurological disorder that arises after 4 days?
No,
Okay.
that would be reported later.
Uh-huh. And can you provide any proof that there was any reports or follow-up after those 4 days?
Well, it doesn't say that here, but
he didn't ask what it said there. He asked if you could provide proof that any surveying of the patients was done after 4 days, and he said it doesn't say it here. That's his way of saying no, absolutely not. Of course I cannot provide that.
I'm willing to bet that they did collect reactions after 4 days, and I imagine that the FDA would not have allowed them not to do that.
But as you sit here today, that's just speculation, correct?
Yes, that's speculation based on experience.
I'm going to make a request for you to provide proof of what you're claiming, that there
No, he can't provide proof. He's already told you, but he would bet his money that it's out there somewhere.
was actually for both hepatitis B vaccines. Any safety review that occurred after 4 days of administration of any dose of these vaccines?
Well,
Again, I'm going to continue the objection, I guess, from last time since we took a longer break. There's a proper procedure to request documents and discovery. He doesn't have to come back and produce it.
The objection's noted. Thank you. Okay, so...
Oh, wow, that's good. Stanley can say anything he wants. He won't be asked to produce any evidence for it.
And there was no placebo group.
Which kind of works both ways in a way, I guess. But if Stanley cannot produce the evidence requested now, there is none. So when he says something along the lines of, I'll bet they have done studies, meaningless, speculation, as was pointed out.
Correct? In the 13,000, in the trial at the top where it talks about 13,000 doses being administered.
It does not say that there was a control group. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the study.
And do you believe, so you think but you're just speculating that there might have been a control group?
There well might have been. It is not unusual for controls to be included, especially if you're looking at reactions. But I don't know specifically for this study.
All right, well, if you're claiming there might have been a control group, then please do provide support for that, because as far as I understand, the manufacturer, and this was, who makes Engerix-B? Glaxo?
Glaxo.
One of your clients. If there was a control group, they needed to have disclosed that. And I assume they're not disclosing it because there was none.
Well,
Doc, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
well,
Doctor.
all right, go ahead.
All right.
Ms. Newsom, are you still there?
Yeah, my headset died, but I called back in, so I don't think I missed much. We're still going over the insert.
So let's go back to section 6.2 on this manufacturer insert for Engerix-B. It talks about the post-marketing experience for this vaccine. This one lists for immune system disorders that were reported, a whole number of them, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it also lists a number of nervous system disorders, including encephalitis, encephalopathy, migraine, multiple sclerosis, neuritis, neuropathy, paresthesia. I'll ask the question all the way at the end. Guillain-Barré syndrome, Bell's palsy, optic neuritis, paralysis, paresis, seizures, syncope, and transverse myelitis. Correct? It lists all of those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all those it lists as adverse effects.
But to know whether or not these are actually caused by Engerix-B, again...
Sorry, they're not saying it causes these effects. All the things they listed there have been monitored in 4 days, did they say? That was the 4-day study. All those things were found in the 13,000 plus doses that were administered in the trials.
Again, you would need a properly randomized placebo-controlled study, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But this study wasn't done pre-licensure for this vaccine, right?
I'd have to go back and look at the original studies. but these data undoubtedly refer not only to the study that was done before licensure, but also to phenomena reported after licensure.
That's 6.2, right? Okay, and again, given that this vaccine now appears on the CDC's recommended list, it would be unethical to do a randomized, placebo-controlled study of this vaccine, right?
In which case, if it's now unethical to do the same studies, can they call that science? If it's, you know, as Stanley himself said, it needs to be tests that are done repeatedly, studies that are done repeatedly, and yet it's now unethical.
In children, it would be unethical. It could be done in adults.
Oh.
Okay, we are getting to the point now where we're gonna leave it. We're at 12:57:27. Yeah, we're gonna start wrapping up for the night. I tell you what, we'll let it play to 12:58, and then we're gonna stop, or at least on the subject or questioning they are.
Okay. Now, if you could please go to page 11 of this same manufacturer insert for the hepatitis B. If you take a look over there, I think you'll find that it provides that there was a follow-up with regard to efficacy, not safety, efficacy, that was beyond the 4 days.
Yes.
Okay, and what was done beyond the 4 days on the efficacy, they use a word that approaching midnight I'm finding hard to pronounce. That's why we are going to draw things to a halt, but not on adverse effects. They're no longer, this test is no longer being done beyond 4 days to find out any adverse effects. It's on how efficient, whether the people that receive the doses are still immune, how efficiently, how well the treatment plan works. Yeah, that one will be for next Sunday. So yeah, we get to the time of the stream where I thank everyone for tuning in. Not many people to thank in the live chat, just Jeff and Nathan. If anyone wants to say hello either here or on Rumble before we wrap up, you've got 30 seconds or so. As I would like to just say thanks to a few names that I'll put up on screen now. Thanks to those that have gone beyond hitting the thumbs up button and found my work in other places, including Patreon, Cash App, and there's some other links. If you watch on Rumble, there'll be links in the description. Otherwise, QR codes, URLs are on the screen now. We will be back. Yeah, but if you don't want to go as far as that, if you just want to show some appreciation, you can do so by hitting the thumbs up button before we finish tonight, and subscribing to this channel if you're not already, and sharing on social media is also a big compliment. And yeah, I would certainly thank anyone for doing that. Okay, this is where we are. Yeah, I'm going to say thanks for tuning in. I will be back Thursday. If you want to, there are links to the full 9-hour video of Stanley Plotkins' deposition if you want to watch it in your own time, in the description of the video, both on YouTube and on Rumble. There's also a YouTube playlist of these previous 3 parts and tonight's, which you can watch if you want to catch up with earlier parts of this stream. Okay, I'll be back, if not before, as I often say, Thursday. and I thank you for tuning in. Over and out. Good night.
Have you ever used orphans to study an experimental vaccine?
Yes.